Yo, what's up, gamers? Aaron Shack here, and we are live on the Shackcast. This is episode 79. We are just one episode away from 80. I'm very excited. I need to fix that transition. I think it's cutting in and out at a time. Anyway, it's being weird, and the PC is always struggling to do things. But we have things that we want to talk about today. We did previously sit down with Andrew Alliance. Check out episode 78, where I was a guest on the show radio with Andrew Alliance. And we talked about a number of things of the virality and the incredible experience that Arc Raiders provides in terms of a PvE/VP game where it's PvE and PvP combined, and you kind of just never know what's going to happen. And it's so weird that the community in solo mode is like so outwardly friendly, and everyone's just like, yeah, let's just do quests and team up and hang out. And occasionally you're going to get someone that does the PvP thing, and whether you like that or not, it's up to you. I'm not the biggest fan of that type of gameplay, but, I acknowledge it exists. We talked about that. We talked about the Steam machine, which I have been like a ping pong ball on this. I've been on opposite sides of the arena, back and forth, because I think at first, my gut reaction before I even talked to Andrew, when I learned about it, I was like, okay, we have obviously gaming PCs that run Steam. We have the Steam Deck, which is, your portable screen that you can take anywhere. It's also dockable. They actually have a dock that like a Switch. You can dock it on and then play games on your TV. And you can even Bluetooth a controller up to it. I mean, you can download operating systems onto it. There's like Linux built in. You can simply go into like the PC mode and like that's where a lot of people, myself included, we'll probably download like emulators and stuff so that we can play like older retro games and have those on the go. So it does wonders for like game preservation in a way and allowing us to play it on modern hardware. Granted, like the Steam Decks are not exactly cheap, but they are meant, against a Switch, they are meant to give you like powerful and portable PC gaming, which the cheapest Steam Deck right now, it's 20% off, goes for $319. They have a 512 gig OLED, which is $549 now, and then 1 terabyte OLED is $649. So actually, I bought like the base model LCD one, but I mean, I obviously paid the premium price at launch because I thought, oh, I love this, I'm gonna be all over it. And in reality, I didn't play it all that much. And the dock is like $80, and it has like extra USB ports. It's got your wired networking capabilities. It's got USBs so that you could plug in, charge controllers, whatever you may need. Also, the Steam Deck, it's heavy. It gets hot, especially when you're playing more high-performance games. I know we could have Mikkel Casanova on to like really get into the details, and I think I would love to potentially have him as a guest in the future, because he is just the master of talking about. I mean, he has his own podcast where they literally just talk about portable handheld things like this. So with all that context, looking at what the Steam machine does, which I'm going to pull it up on screen for those that are watching the pod, you can see. It's kind of doing the same thing. So that was my gut reaction, was like, well, my Steam Deck is probably cheaper than this thing, and it's got a screen built in, plus I can dock it. So what's the incentive here? Is this going to be powerful than Steam Decks, or how's it all going to work? So we've talked about it, and when I sat and talked about it with Andrew Alliance, I was like, okay, I'm a little more balanced, a little more excited about it. Like the idea that my Steam library is ready to go on the go. The fact that they will have Steam machine verified games. So just like with the Steam Deck, there'll be like a little green check mark that lets you know, like, hey, this has been tested, it's been verified, it totally runs on Steam Deck. It'll happen for this as well. And then there's some with like a yellow symbol that lets you know, like, hey, it'll run, but like, the print might be too small to read, or like controllers may not kind of work right. Like, yeah, and then there's just games that straight up don't work. And I thought some games would eventually make it over, but I'm still surprised that some of the Batman games are not capable. So yeah, you've got SteamOS, which is really good, really smooth, pretty easy to use. You do have this, right? The small form factor. It's a tiny cube. I mean, it does have just the fan in it, but it says it's going to be cool and quiet. But I think we know from like laptop gaming, from Steam Decks, all these other things, they get hot, depending on what you're playing, especially if it's like Cyberpunk. The ports look fine. Not having like HDMI 2.1 is kind of a weird thing, and they're obviously not cutting it for budget, because they're, what we're going to talk about later is the price that this thing could be. The CPU and GPU, they're saying 4K, 60 FPS, but that is with FSR. So we're talking about AMD, frame generation type stuff. So AMD desktop class CPU and GPU. So they are trying to say, like, hey, this is the power of a desktop PC, but in the form factor of a console. So yeah, Iceman's asking, Steam Cube, what can it do? Yeah, that's definitely where we're getting now. So 2 storage sizes, 512 gig and 2 terabytes. And then you also have a micro SD, much like the Nintendo Switch, and much like the Steam Deck, where you can just pop one of those in and get a little extra mileage. I think 512 is even the PS5 and Xbox Series X coming out with the 500 gigabyte models was like mind-numbingly like tone deaf on how big games are now these days. Like 500 gigabytes, like that could be like Call of Duty, Overwatch, Red Dead, and then you're full, like, and we're not even getting into like, okay, how much are updates and expansions that add to those various games, or whatever genre of games that you like to play. If you have a 500 gigabyte SSD or hard drive or whatever it may be, you are constantly uninstalling games. Like, you're trying to complete games so that you can delete them and play something else. You're not really enjoying all the games and having them there for a rainy day, or when you're playing like games as a service type games, Overwatch, Destiny, Rainbow Six, things that are consistently updated, weekly updates over time, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it definitely has like like the Series X is kind of like a rectangular shaped tower, and so yeah, I mean the Steam Deck machine here is going for more of a square shape, where everything's all the same size, and the form factor is impressive. And if they're gonna have like different plates and customized plates, or the ability to take it off to see the fan, clean it, all those various things. How well it's going to be protected from dust getting in there. So yeah, they say it's not a giant brick, and the power supply is built in, so there's no like power brick external of that like Xbox 360 had. Some consoles put the power brick inside. So yeah, that's the thing. LED stripped. I mean, that looks cool. It's fine. SteamOS is great. The verification, them just showing that, like, hey, you could literally just hook a monitor or a TV up to this thing. So, like, who is it for, right? We're talking about, like, could this, is this for people that already have a PC like me, or people that have consoles like me, or people that have both? And it's like, if you already have a Steam Deck, do you really need this? Because you can just hook your Steam Deck up to your TV. But also, this could potentially have better stats and performance depending on which Steam Deck you bought. I mean, a lot of people are suggesting the idea that, like, Steam could come in and just gut punch the console market space by going like, okay, Nintendo's got like the cheapest option that's like really friendly, easy to get into, great for kids. Like Nintendo has always been a brand that can do their own thing. And then, with Xbox and PlayStation raising their prices by $50 in the States, more in some areas, where it's the first time that we're 5 years into a console generation and we're already talking about what's next. We're already talking about PS6 and a modular Xbox that might try to use Steam and, be able to slot in different parts, kind of the way they have that external hard drive card that you can just put in there and get an extra terabyte or two, or whatever it is you may need. There is that. I don't know if Xbox will ever embrace that or like how it would work. Like, would they have like specific peripherals that have to be designed for the console? Like, they're not gonna just let you plug in like any RAM chip. Like, I don't know how it would work. Like, you would want the freedom of being able to put in whatever parts you want, but also I think Xbox would also like that control so that they can maintain quality and optimization across the board if people are going to be slotting in, RAM chips and CPUs or whatever it may be. Yeah. Yeah, Mikhail's definitely the dude. I will see if we can book him on for a future podcast. I think that would be great. There's so many things that we could talk about. Yeah. So great for streaming, being able to like stream to any of your other devices and do all the hard work for you so that pretty much this is just a glorified screen. Both of these hardwares are become screens rather than having the Steam Deck get nice and hot while you're trying to play Witcher or whatever it may be. All the processing, all the hard work happening in here, and then it just like streams it there. Depending on your internet, that could be bad too. And so I have shifted a bit. I've gone from like, and here's why I shifted. There have been several outlets, YouTubers, media that have said, it would be nice if like Steam came in, took a loss, and priced this like where the PS5 and Xbox are, or cheaper than them, or somewhere in between them, so as to be competitive and to make the console market sort of like get in shape here. Instead of, offering us like the worst product at launch and then a pro product a few years later that feels kind of gimmicky and hardly any better, but it only ends up being really good for like new people that are picking that up rather than people that already own it. This should come in at a price that's affordable, especially in the state that our economy is in. I know this will be all over the world, but also there are other places all throughout the world where our economies, everything's becoming overpriced. Wages are stagnant. Everything is coming in at a premium price. And, some people will say gaming is a luxury. It's not a luxury. It's not yachts. It's not exotic supercars. It's not gold and diamonds and stuff. This has always been something that, like, any home in America or all over the world can, that's always been the thing of gaming, is that, like, we could all have a gaming console under our TV. It may be expensive. You may only get one. Or maybe you get one, your brother gets one, or whatever, like it, and it was like you had to wait for birthdays or Christmas, to get a game, to get more games to play on it. Or we would rent games, and now there's subscription services where you're renting games. And so there's all sorts of different things. So it doesn't feel, and so Steam has already kind of snapped back at it by saying like, hey, these are our specs. We're targeting 60 FPS 4K. We're coming in at like, if you built a PC, which I built mine, my initial starting thing was about $1,300. And the graphics card was the most expensive part because crypto mining was inflating the prices of graphics cards. So and I built it, and it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was. I had a friend help me, so Steam kind of saying like, hey, we're simplifying all that for you. It's like, dude, if you have a friend that's built a PC or knows anything about it, or if you watch YouTube videos, go on Google if you have questions. Like, literally Henry Cavill, Terry Crews, other people have built gaming PCs and just followed instructions or had like zero knowledge and kicked up a live stream and just started getting help from people. Like, the internet can be a great place for that. So I would say if this thing comes in, if Steam Machine comes in at a price where it's like it costs more than consoles, and it's almost in the zone where it is physically competing with PC games with, a custom or a pre-built PC, which you could do that too. You could just have someone else build it for you. And yeah, I mean, the price is going to be a little more than you seeking out the parts and building it yourself. You can get things cheaper by buying it individually and assembling it yourself. I mean, that's a totally valid way to go. So what I'm saying is, I think that this is probably not worth your money. Unless it comes in at a really good price. Yeah, they haven't actually revealed the price, but we kind of have an idea based on the way the media talks about it, the way the press talks about it, the way people at Valve have sort of said, like, hey, no, it's a PC and it will be priced like a PC. So they're basically saying, we don't care that consoles are $550, $650, and then you factor in games. Yeah, like it could be $700, $800. It could be $1,000. I think if it's over $1,000, you should definitely just buy a PC, pre-built or custom. Either way, I think you should be able to do mods because technically it's just like a Steam Deck, where you are going to have an OS and you'll be able to just go in there and if you want to download mods, you can do that. That's the freedom of PC gaming. So. It's just going to have to hit the perfect niche. And if they're basically not wanting to compete with consoles because they want to be the highest price point on the market, and also, arguably probably want to have some value, right? Which is like one of the biggest libraries of games and, PC compatibility, the fact that it is a PC. Like, you could log on, pay your bills, listen to your music, make YouTube videos, watch YouTube videos, whatever. And then you can just load up, Steam or whatever and start playing. That capability is there. So where I'm leaning more towards now is like, if it's out of the realm of affordability, which really, even the PS5 and Xbox Series X right now with the $50 price hike, I'm not sure if it's worth it. I think that's outrageous, and I wouldn't buy one, which is crazy because I have them both on my shelf. I bought them at launch, and they were much better priced at launch, which is like mind-numbingly backwards, which is absolutely insane. And see, if you custom build a PC, you put more fans in there. You can put as many, you can put some SSDs in there. You could put in a graphics card. We don't even know exactly how upgradable the Steam machine will be. It could be that, kind of like the handhelds, dude. As soon as I bought my Steam Deck, they practically announced the OLED like a few months later. And I was like, well, screw this. It's just like when you buy a VR headset. As soon as you buy one, there will be a new one on the market. Just like an iPhone, as soon as you buy one, it's like driving a new car off the lot. You lose like $60,000 of the price tag, or $20,000 or whatever. Like, you lose, I guess what I mean is you're losing a massive percentage of what you paid just because you got in and drove it off the lot. Yeah, so the LED is pretty cool. Yeah. So I don't think it's worth it. I almost even wouldn't tell you to buy an Xbox Series X or PS5 right now because of where the prices are. I would wait for a sale that gets them more in line with where they need to be. I don't agree with the fact that they're price hiking in a time where gaming should be affordable and none of this stuff should be treated as luxurious. You're starting to price out the middle class and even the lower class customers. And I'm not saying Steam Machine has to do that. That it needs to be $300 or whatever. Like, four or 500 is incredible, I would think. And I think when you get to 600-700, you're like, okay, who's this for? And a lot of people are saying, well, I already have a PC, so I'm just going to buy one for the living room, or one for the bedroom. Or I have my Xbox here, I got my PC there. It's like, okay, clearly, kind of like me, you already have everything. It's not a necessity, it's more of like a want. Which, none of these products, that's why I say gaming's not luxurious. It's something you want, but you take care of your needs before you purchase gaming peripherals and stuff like that. Whereas with like jewelry and gold and yachts and exotic supercars, you purchase that when you are, those are luxurious purchases. So gaming is not a luxury, getting a ice mocha is not a luxury. It doesn't make sense. So I have been like I said, I've been flip-flopping on this issue. I've been all over the place. On one hand, it's a really cool idea. It's a really interesting innovation. We would also have to see it in practice. Does it live up to all this? Is it as properly optimized as it should be? What games are verified, what games aren't verified, and like how do developers moving forward make sure that their games run on this thing? And how outdated is all this tech going to be as soon as you drive this thing off the lot? Because that's a reality as well. I think no matter what, you are still better off. A basic gaming PC, you can get $800, $1,000. Like if this thing's $700, $800, or $1,000, just buy a gaming PC. I know the Cube looks really cool, but like, you're going to get more use. It's like buying a hot rod. You're going to be able to slot in all the parts that you need. You're going to be able to take things out as you're like, oh, this thing doesn't perform anymore. I'm going to sell that, or I'm going to use it to build another PC. Like, you have all the things. Yeah, exactly. Like, I literally have a PC hooked up to 2 TVs and a monitor right now and a teleprompter. Like, that's absolutely better. I mean, you only have an HDMI 2.0, not a 2.1, and you only have one display port, which you can daisy chain. These are what you would typically plug a monitor into, which you could daisy chain if you want to. But, like, in reality, the more, as I've noticed with my setup, the more screens you have, the more that sort of divides your graphics card's energy across all of that. So it's a little crazy. So it is going to bog your system down by having more and more things plugged in. And 2 terabytes is pretty good. I don't think you'd survive long on 500 gigs nowadays. You're just not going to have that many games installed. I know that's probably going to be where they come in at their lower, more reasonable price point, but I'm worried that even that will be more than what PlayStation and Xbox are charging. And I think you can get 1080 60, you can get 4K 60, you can get 4K 30, depending on certain games, like you can get all these things. I'm not all in on the 4K stuff. I really don't see the point. I don't think it matters a whole lot. I think frame rates are good and resolutions in which games look good is good, and depending on what your TV is, it just doesn't make sense. So yeah. Yeah, and you don't want to be having to constantly uninstall games. Like, that's painful. And forcing yourself to like rush through games or end up deleting a game that you were really enjoying but you don't play as much, but you want to play this new game that just came out, or just, by having so many live service games on your list where it's like, oh, I can't uninstall Destiny and Apex because I play those, and those have like weekly updates and changes, and that's where me and the boys team up and play all week, whatever. I can't delete those so that I can play this epic single player game or whatever, So, the specs are pretty good. Like 16 gigs is not super good. That's kind of low. And yeah, like it just feels like it is going to be somewhat dated rather quickly. I think you're going to see like a Steam Machine 2 or someone else is going to start coming out with different things. Other people are going to potentially compete somehow. Whether it's the consoles that exist right now, or whether it's, your Switch 2 or your Asus and all these other platforms, Lenovo and all that have been putting out their handhelds. I mean, they might potentially try to put out their own bricks and go from there. So my overall recommendation is that unless this is just really appealing to you and it comes in at a value that is really worthwhile, this is kind of like buying the most expensive iPhone. It's pretty cool for about a year or less until they announce the next one, or until someone else makes something better that's cheaper or more portable. And we really need to see how it lines up with the Steam Decks. In terms of performance, it's meant to be better than them, but we also just need to see how that actually develops finally. So we'll know more when Steam's ready to like drop that price and say like, hey, this is what we're doing, and we'll see how the world reacts to it. Yeah, and their controller is kind of neat. The Steam controller is kind of interesting. It's got the haptic pads beneath. It's a little more form factor than the original Steam controller, which had the haptic pads where the thumbstick should be. So that was like really weird, and it was not a good controller. This looks much better. I would love to get hands-on with this thing. And yeah, they're doing magnetic thumbsticks, so there shouldn't be any stick drift there. So magnetic and Hall effect are some of the best, where you just won't get stick drift at all. And I also wonder if these will be compatible with other platforms, or if it's strictly your PC. Because it kind of would be cool to like play with this on other platforms, other consoles, but more likely just going to be a PC controller. But I think with the Bluetooth connectivity, you might be able to play games on your phone and online and stuff like that. So we'll see. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I think you probably kind of understand where I stand on that. Whereas as expensive as PC gaming has gotten to be, and as expensive as it is to build PCs and acquire some of the parts, especially like GPUs becoming like overinflated, I still think there's more value there, and you can still find a cost-effective way to do that. Because yeah, I do think Steam should come in there and compete and do the gut punch, but it's looking like they're not wanting to do that. They want to price themselves as a PC. So that means PC prices are coming with it. So I don't think it's worth it, man. I think it's going to be too much for just a little box. And if you just built a gaming PC, you would have a more powerful, longer lasting hardware that's much easier to upgrade. where, most GPUs are not going to be designed to fit into that little cube. It's going to be very, very niche. Yeah, and so far all we know is that there are two models of the Steam machine, and I mean, I don't know what you would put in there, like laptop parts, like but I don't know. We'll see. So other things I wanted to talk about was more about The Running Man and Wicked for Good. I went and saw those this weekend. I saw them on Sunday, and I did sort of a back-to-back show, and I'm going to get into how it gets into Superman. But the thing that these three movies have in common, The Running Man with Glenn Powell, Wicked for Good, and then thirdly, the Superman movie. I wanted to talk about that because these are all movies that came out in 2025, and I think they're all sort of battling in a very fun and fair, competitive way, where they are all about fighting fascism. They are all about, various forms of propaganda, occupation, the way governments hide and use things, secret shadow government conspiracies happening in the background, the way they feed us propaganda. All three of these movies have it, right? With Superman and the Jaramporians being oppressed by the other folks, and, it's basically Ben Gurion and Israel, and, with a little bit of Netanyahu sprinkled in there with the guy's voice, it was very clearly a message to the world about what Israel is doing to Palestine, about the occupation and the killing of civilians. Now, The Running Man kind of does the same thing. It gets into capitalism and commercialism and sort of the cyberpunk reality TV world that, we're all sort of fed all this garbage and all this propaganda. And at the end of the day, it's us versus the billionaires. It's not left versus right. It's not Democrat versus Republican. It's evil, greedy billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and all these people that are just trying to get richer and richer beyond comprehension, more money than they could spend in 10,000 lifetimes. And then just us, the regular guy that has a daughter that has cancer, and working 2-3 jobs, the wife working 2-3 jobs. It's a top versus bottom thing, and I think all the movies kind of emphasize that, but I think that's where Running Man really does well. And I think what's cool is that all three of these movies do it without preaching to you. They're not talking down to you. They're not saying, oh, you're a piece of shit if you don't agree with us, or oh, if you don't like our message, you're a racist, or oh, if you don't like our message, you're anti-LGBT. So none of that is happening with all these movies. They have a very clear message, but they also have good writing, a good story. They all have, good action for what they are. So, getting into The Running Man, I think Glenn Powell is amazing. I've watched most of his movies, but the ones I would highlight was Set It Up, Anyone But You, which is kind of a remake of What You Do About Nothing. Much Ado About Nothing. I can't say words. Twisters was really good. He was in The Dark Knight. He was the stockbroker that got beaten up by Bane. He has done. Hitman was really good on Netflix, where he plays a variety of a bunch of actors. He was in the new Top Gun. Tom Cruise actually taught him how to run for doing The Running Man, because he was like, dude, you're going to be in this movie. And every stunt coordinator, everyone that Glenn spoke to was like, you got to call Tom. He's the only one that really knows how to run and make it look good. And so I could see it. I could see it in his posture. I could see it in his stride. I was like, that is the Tom Cruise run. That's the Mission Impossible 3, sprint all the way down, alongside the river. It was sick. So Glenn did really good. So what else happened with The Running Man is that this is more based around the book. It's not a remake of the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. It's not meant to at all be like that. It's meant to pay tribute and poke fun at it. That's why there are new dollar bills with Arnold Schwarzenegger's face on it. And Arnold watched the movie and he loved it. And he said, I could tell Glenn, like, doing some of these stunts, doing some of these action scenes and sprinting, and like that this game kicked, or this movie kicked your ass. And he was like, it sure did. And Stephen King, who wrote the book, watched the movie, gave him the thumbs up, said it was great. And of course, this is a movie coming from the director of Hot Fuzz, Edgar Wright, which, I mean, if you've seen Hot Fuzz, that's like everyone's favorite, like, action comedy type of movie. And Edgar Wright does a wide variety of movies, but you can see his style and his humor that comes through, and sort of the satirical TV ads and personalities, and even the way, the Running Man is set up as this very believable game show, just like The Voice or like Fear Factor or any of these shows where they sort of put people in like really shitty situations, or they try to like dramatize how dark and depressing their life is, and how we're giving them the chance to turn around, or how in the case of the Running Man, it's basically like, hey, these are all criminals, these are all like the dirtbags of society, let's report them. Well, what it's teaching you is to be the people that call ICE, the people that call La Migra to, have them like come beat up and arrest people off the street, have our own Gestapo. There were a lot of sort of ties to that, of how that's dramatized, and how it's brought in as like, you're doing your duty, just like the Nazis. Like, people would snitch on the Jews that were hiding in people's basements or in their attics or wherever they were. People would snitch on them, and that's because there was propaganda everywhere giving people a reason to do so. And all this is just a modern game show telling you to pretty much do the same thing. Even though, like, later in the movie, everyone sort of realizes that Glenn Powell's character, Ben Richards, he's just a regular guy. He's just a dad trying to get money for his daughter and his wife. And he has that will to live that carries him through this game show. He's not a murderer. He's not some like super soldier trained killer. Like, he doesn't even kill a lot of people in the movie. He's not even really good with guns. He just kind of like Nathan Drake, stumbles his way through this adventure and does a lot of crazy things just to survive. So it puts a light on a mirror up to our society and shows us what we can be and what we should be, and almost the path that we're on to what we can turn into. So, I mean, I think Glenn's a really great guy, and I think what was really interesting was he heard his name was in talks to be in the Running Man, and so he got a hold of Edgar Wright somehow, and he said, hey, I heard my name's like in the hat for this. Listen, if you get me on this role, I will work harder than any actor has ever worked. And like, you can see it in his work ethic in every movie that he's in, and especially movies like Hitman and The Running Man, where he literally gets to play so many different characters. You can see that he has that skill to not only be funny and romantic and action-packed and angry and do his own stunts and, just sort of being a mentee of Tom Cruise. He also has this ability to just be a chameleon and just play anyone and take it totally seriously, whether it's funny or whether it's, I need to actually turn into this character, whether that's likable or not, So, and I think the cast was really great across the board. I think Josh Brolin was incredible. I think Michael Cera was a good surprising twist that they brought in there. I think Coleman Domingo was like the perfect like game show host to have in there. William H. Macy was really good. Lee Pace, they tried to make him look ugly. He still looked amazing. I I think this is an incredible movie, and I can't wait to watch it at home. I can't wait to watch it again because it's Glenn like we haven't seen him before. Usually he's snarky and laughing and just smiling and being smug and having a good time in a lot of his films where, you know, he gets to play the hero type. But now he plays this character that's just pissed. He is angry the whole movie. He hates, you know, society. He hates the way millionaires, you know, top down are controlling all these people. And he sees through all the bullshit. And he just wants to work hard, make some money, and help people. He's a general, working man, every guy type of character. But, you know, when he gets put in this arena, in this game show, he just becomes the angriest man in the world because he just wants to tear all of it down. And everything from the music, the score, the way, of course, that Edgar Wright cuts his films, the way they're edited, the way it's filmed, it's absolutely incredible. It's an action movie that finally makes you want to be back in the theater again. We have some good comic book films. We have some good musicals. We're starting to get some good dramas again. A couple comedies are starting to come in. You know, romantic comedies aren't totally dead. And this feels like an action movie that you can actually appreciate. But I think if you're going in with a mirror and trying to like constantly compare it to Arnold's movie, which was, you know, the budget was small. That's why it didn't honor the book in being this like, you know, globe-trotting adventure. You know, it just ends up being in like a coliseum more or less. I think this does more respect to the source material. Doesn't mean that one version or one movie's better than the other. They can both coexist, and they can both be really great. So I think this is a good and powerful movie that sends a message that we can all learn from and identify with. Okay? So now, talking about Wicked for Good, this is another movie that is based off a Broadway musical. This is part 2 of Wicked. They split the movie. Last year, Wicked Part 1 came out, and then this year, Wicked for Good. They were filming these together. And what this is about, what this musical sort of gets into, is that the Wizard and Oz, it's the rise of fascism across the land, and they are animals can talk in this world, but they're locking them in cages. Does that remind you of anything going on in our society right now, where we're just going after certain people, academics, people that look different or sound different than we are, and we're putting them in cages and shipping them off and disappearing them off the streets? We're silencing our universities and telling them what they can or can't teach, things like that. Where Wicked ends up being the story of the Wizard of Oz, right? We're talking about the Wicked Witch of the West, and we're talking about how she becomes that, right? So throughout the musical, you know, you meet these two witches, Galinda, who doesn't have any actual power. You know, she sort of is in her own little bubble and has, you know, the wizard eventually gives her machines to sort of trick people into thinking she's powerful, in the same way that the wizard uses, you know, tricks and theatrics and stuff to make people think that he is this grand leader that has all of this incredible magical power. It ends up being that Cynthia Erivo's character, Elphaba, who is the Wicked Witch, you know, she ends up being cast as the propaganda symbol, the evil other, you know, the reason that our society is so bad is because of her. You know, there's this evil, and they do the thing that Israel does to Gaza, where Israel drops pamphlets from the sky telling you who they're going to bomb next, and they say, oh, we're the most kindest moral army in the world, you know, we give you a little warning. That's still a fucking war crime. Where the same thing happens in Wicked for Good. They drop pamphlets from the sky saying, we just want to know where the witch is going to strike next. They just want to know from there. So it gets into the idea that The Wizard of Oz, the movie, is a propaganda film. It's a retelling of the events of Wicked, but it's sugarcoating it, right? It's making the witch evil. It's making Dorothy all good. It's making Galinda, her character, being the good witch makes her all good, and that they unmask the wizard and he goes away. Whereas Wicked is like the behind the scenes, the like true story that is going on that no one really knows about except for the characters involved in all the events. No one knows the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, all these different things are characters that were deeply ingrained in the story of these, these two witches rather. So it's really interesting the way it adapts all these themes, and of course it has, really good musical, really good singers. Obviously this is, based off a Broadway musical, which has some of the best talent behind the Broadway musical. They even cameoed in the first one, in the first film in 2024. So you do have Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, which, they both sang really well, and there's points where I'm like, okay, this is not super great, but they do really well, and it is a little concerning that they are both incredibly skinny, and I think Grande is looking a little extra, just like skeletal. It's almost akin to the starvation we see around the world being sort of propagandized as like, oh, this is the ultimate female form is to be just as skinny as her, and then to cinch the dress all the way until you can't breathe. It is a little concerning. But yeah, I think the first movie ends up being a little better, because I think it has that thing where it shows, the prejudice of the green skin and being misunderstood because of that, and the way people treat you as other, and then the way that, people are, Galinda is sort of the inauthentic good witch that sort of like pretends to help you because it makes her image look good. Like it definitely gets into like almost like the way high school bullying and stuff like that functions. I don't know. And I think it just has an overall like a better arc throughout the story. And I think Wicked really gets into that really well. And then of course it has, the big moment at the end, where I sort of realized, I was like, Elphaba, to, a mostly female audience with this type of musical, Elphaba is kind of their Superman. Like, she takes off flying on the broomstick, and like the rolling theme comes in where it's like da na 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 na, and you just have those like just rapid 16th notes coming in where it's like, oh, she's about to fly. Like, I knew that immediately because it's like, I've watched Superman, I've watched every superhero movie, and when those rapid notes start coming in, you start getting that flight theme. You're just like, oh yeah, this to them, this is their character. And granted, men can go to the show and enjoy it in just the same way, in the way I did. But I think for women and for young girls, it definitely spreads this positive message, and it gives us the ability to learn to accept others for their differences and to see strengths in our differences rather than to just fear the other and to cage up things because we don't understand them, Yeah, and I think both of the lead characters have had issues with like dieting and muscle and public perception of it's like, oh, your cheeks look puffy now, like, oh, when did you get so fat? And it's, they're just constantly having to juggle having this perfectionist image that society casts on them, but also that the music industry casts on our artists, to be these perfect plastic wrinkleless, type things, and then also having Hollywood projecting their own body standards. It is scary. It is at a point where it is very deeply concerning, where it's like, in the musical you have two perfectly normal women singing this on Broadway, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to go and give plastic surgery to any of them. It's just very unusual. And I think Jonathan Bailey, of course, who you might know from Bridgerton, does a really good job as Fiyero. I thought that was really cool. And Peter Dinklage plays the goat, Dr. Dillamond, and it was just so heartbreaking when he couldn't speak anymore, and they captured him and caged him. And I think Jeff Goldblum was perfect for the Wizard. And I love that he has some jazz singing background and he plays piano. I think that was perfect casting, and I love that he embraced the role and the character and put his quirky weirdness into it. I think that definitely helped. So I don't think there's any bad casting there. And I just think the first part probably has some of the best songs too. Whereas, part 2 is obviously going to have those points where they do callbacks to songs and reprise songs throughout that. Oh, I didn't know that Nick and Joe Jonas were up for the Fiyero role. That's crazy. That would have been a totally different movie if Jonathan Bailey didn't get that role. But that, yeah, definitely some very difficult singing, and there's something to talk about with the way they film movies. I think you could almost compare it to Ant-Man. Sorry, let me pull it up. Not the first Ant-Man, but Quantumania, where the whole movie is like on a soundstage, and it's all like everything's fake. The lighting's fake. The backgrounds, the fantastic worlds they're in are fake. But what they do for most of Quantumania is they do like mid shots, where it's not a close up. It's just kind of like this, and then the background ends up being blurred. So all the hard work you've done on creating this beautiful world and all this detail, and the way older movies will just not blur things like that. They'll just be like, there will be things in the background. And we even choreograph things that happen in the background. We say, oh yeah, a goat should walk by and a farmer and whatever else. So Quantumania blurs it, and also Wicked does it a lot too, where they're in a beautiful forest or they're in a beautiful area, and then they'll hyper-focus the actor, bake in the lighting, and this beautiful environment that VFX artists have probably worked really hard to create just ends up being the beautiful bokeh in the background, because we're all sort of obsessed with having these perfect skin, perfect texture, perfect lighting. It doesn't feel real anymore. Like, movies don't feel like they were filmed either on location or at least believable. We're losing that. We're losing that a lot. And the thing is, with Running Man, they use sets, but they also did on-location stuff. And with Wicked, there's obviously some sets that have been built, but for the most part, a lot of the world is animated. And even the sets that, like Elphaba's little forest hangout, some of the most gorgeous sets that they hang out on at night, and they're just there, they will just pull all focus on the actor, and you have this gorgeous set that you could just have everybody just sort of bask in a wide shot, and then it goes into a close shot, but you can still see the background, be like, oh my god, look at that lamp, look at this book over here, like, and admire all of the details and the hard work. And if you go back and watch older movies, you'll see that there's so much in the background. And that's why, like, movies like Lord of the Rings hold up so well, is because even on the close-up shots, the mid-range shots, or even the wide panning shots as they're going across a mountaintop, it's all real. And it's not that every movie needs to go film in New Zealand. It's that if you're gonna create a world, you need to make it look real, and you need to allow us to enjoy it. But with Quantumania, they did the same thing. They created these insane, like, AI fever dreams, And then they blurred like half of it out doing these mid-range shots where it's almost like you can literally see the green screen. You're just like, it completely removes you from anything that's happening. And then because the lighting and the skin and little things are just a little too perfect, it just doesn't pan out. So Wicked is a little guilty of doing that, both movies, but we also understand that this is a formula. Like with Marvel, with any of these things where they're trying to create these worlds, things just look a little too crisp, a little too where you could almost just let things be real. And it goes with some of the animals, like the little tiger and that she picks up, and it's like really poorly animated. And it's like you could have paid for an animatronic to be made, and you don't even have to have it move or anything. Whatever. You could just have a perfect dummy at the line for him to pick up, and he could swaddle it in a blanket or something and just cover it up, take it to the woods, and then they set it free, and maybe they could have a little animatronic lion walk away, a little baby lion, whatever it is. Better than having like a weird 3D one that didn't look right and looked kind of rushed, and so they panned away on different camera angles so as not to show the lion too much. So, I mean, it would be nice to have more practical effects. And Marvel is also getting to that point where it's like everything's on a green screen, and so you lose the grounded reality of what's, even if they're happening in space, and even if it's, you know, in a microscopic world or whatever it is, you know, you are missing the reality. You are missing the stakes of all these events by having it look a little too crisp, a little too clean, a little too much like a set, or a little too much like it's so perfect that it doesn't feel like a real place. Or you're not allowing the audience to look at the beautiful backgrounds. I think one moment in Wicked is when they go to the library, and they actually let you see what's in the background because it's a beautiful, gorgeous library that they've spent time, you know, having these essentially like treadmills or hamster wheels of books that people are on, and they're placing books and taking books away, and they start dancing and spinning through them, you know? So it's really cool. But I think there needs to be, because, you know, it would be dumb not to utilize the incredible array of technology that we have and the advances that we have. But if you go back and look at like Pirates of the Caribbean and the way they animate stuff, some of those things hold up better than stuff that Marvel did yesterday or Star Wars did. And so it's like, hey, taking the time, paying your artists, not rushing them and putting them in crunch or firing them or laying them off after a project, or just giving them these like heinous deadlines where, you know, this movie didn't have to come out a year later. You know, if they wanted to give it some time to cook and do an incredible, you know, look at the VFX and give all the artists time to really get it down right and get it perfect, you know, they could have done that, and the audience would have understood. Because, I mean, I think we need to understand that movies take several years, and even if you're shooting them back to back, it doesn't mean that you need to, like, rush it out immediately. Just so you can... It all ends up leading back to the movies about capitalism, and then literally the people making the movie are capitalizing the movie by making sure that it comes out very quickly after the last one. And it's just very unusual. But overall, I think they were both really cool movies, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy them. And I think what would be awesome is to see like a director's cut that addresses some of the plot holes, or even just seeing like if they go back to some of those scenes and just get rid of some of that bokeh and just make it a visually gorgeous movie to look at, because most of the scenery is just wide shot of the environment and then back to a bunch of medium shots. where it's like you could show off the indoors even more than you already do, and quit emphasizing, just dumb things. I think they did some really interesting things overall. But I mean, they got some accolades. The first movie got 10 nominations, including Best Picture, got one Best Costume Design, and Best Production Design. So I don't know how it's going to go for Wicked for Good, but we'll see about that. We'll see how it goes. But I imagine, the costumes were incredible. I don't know. They should probably recognize the music. I don't think the newer original songs were all that incredible. But they definitely add something. They feel a little on the nose. But yeah, it seems weird to have a musical not really get much fanfare for that. But yeah, I think Wicked 2 ought to win something, but you just have to look really deeply at, like, okay, what is it? Whereas I think the first movie had more costumes, but I think the second movie definitely, because I mean they literally just put them in like a million different dresses in the first movie, whereas the second one, sort of just kept what they were already wearing and their already existing styles. The Wicked Witch didn't really change her fashion too much. She only had a few different outfits, and Fierro had a few different outfits, and then also his Scarecrow version was not very good. I think they could have done better or done something more practical, because he kind of looks like a Chex Mix, which was really weird. I was almost expecting that they wouldn't show his face just to prevent like a weird CGI, Henry Cavill mustache incident from happening, but oh, I'd love for Superman to win something. I'm not sure what it would be, but yeah. Yeah, he got that Chex Mix face, dude. Breaks my heart. Yeah. Just wild. But I think what all three of these movies do really well is they talk about capitalism, they talk about fascism, they talk about specifically like how to stand up and fight against it. And all three movies showcase various different types of propaganda and the ways that our governments, our news, our celebrities, all different things will try to manipulate you into thinking that, we're the good guys, we're the best, you know? When in reality it's our tax dollars that are going to like bombing different civilizations and stuff like that. Yeah. Heartbreaking. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what it's like to watch both Wicked movies back to back. Um, and that's why I almost wish that there's gonna be a theatrical cut and a director's cut that could patch some things up here and there, because they definitely have time before their release, and they could even do a thing where they package both movies in a collector's set and then have that. I don't know. It'd be really cool. So, um, more things I've learned. More things I've learned the past couple weeks on the channel as we've been testing out scheduling live streams, as we had a full week of the Division and Arc Raiders and stuff with TX Wolverines after our regular scheduled streams. And, a little bit more communication and content creation. I think I've learned multiple things, both positives and negatives. Number one, it burned me out immediately within weeks. I was like, this is not sustainable, and it's probably not long enough to look at the. It hasn't been long enough to like look at the analytics and be like, oh, there's like some insane measurable difference of where I was this week versus where I was last week versus where I was the week before. And no measurable difference of letting people know which game I'm playing what day at what time. And then also another downside is the fact that some games you just can't make progress on. Like Death Stranding, you gotta play like 6 or 8 hours to make a difference. With Midnight Suns, a single mission and all the cutscenes it entails, a single day in the game, rather, like a whole day where you craft your characters and your cards and you assemble them and you go do a mission and you watch cutscenes and then you get home at the end of the day and you do a thing like that could be 2 or 3 hours. And depending on the missions you pick and different things, it could be a couple of days. And so it felt like I was always rushing from stream to stream and hardly getting anything done in any of the games, which is why sometimes when I've done the daily schedule formula, it absolutely it makes it to where you end up playing these 5 games like forever, because like for Gotham Knights, you could only get a night or 2 done. Whereas if I played Gotham Knights for like a week straight, and we played it every day for like 3 to 6 hours or whatever, then we could probably beat it in a week or 2 or whatever, however long any game has to be. And so there are reasons why the unscheduled vibes streams kind of work, where it's just like, yeah, we're just going to play this and love it. Because, like, think about when Death Stranding 2 came out. I was just like, I'm going to play this all the time. And I did. And I had a lot of fun. And I'm still not done with it. And then I started restricting it to certain days or just a couple days a week here and there. And I always kind of have a plan in my head. I don't always reveal because I'm always waiting until like if my schedule's kind of weird, I'll just be like, I'm going to keep this stream private because I don't know if I'm going to be able to make 8 or 9 or to be able to do this on this day. What's up, TX? Yeah, it can be difficult. So I don't think scheduling is a bad idea. It's just I think keeping the accountability and the predictability is a good thing, because I have always had a list of like what I'm playing, what I want to continue playing, what's doing well on the channel, and it so happens that a lot of the things we streamed these past couple of weeks, like Ghostbusters, is doing really well on the channel for only having 2 episodes out, I believe. I think it was 2? Or is it just... Was it just 1, or was it 2? I think we've done 2. I don't know why that says part 2. Hang on, let me check on this. That's weird. So we've only done 1? Yeah, that's actually really good then for one episode. And then for say like Gotham Knights, that's doing pretty well. Midnight Suns, just getting back into it for 2 weeks, where the first week we only got less than a few hours, and then the next week we got like 3 hours. And arguably I'm going to try to do more with that game. I think that opens up a chance for success right there. Yeah, it is definitely hard to juggle too many plates and you're not progressing enough, or all the plates aren't spinning at the right speeds and things drop off. So I noticed that there was physical burnout hit first, because I've already started getting like a weird pain in my tailbone for sitting for too long. So I'm trying like different things. And my wrists, my hands. I have like physical therapy. I have to start up on that. And then the doctor even said like, hey, for the next 3 months, try to ease up. Because I was like, you know, average gaming could be 3 to 6 hours. Although if I'm like really into something and streaming a lot some days, it could be 8 or 12 hours. So I was like, I could try playing like Dispatch, Midnight Suns, Warhammer 40k, Rogue Trader. You know, these are all games that we started on the channel that are kind of like low interactivity, and then I can also play the games that are like at this crossroad, where they're both like, where it's like Ghostbusters, Warhammer. Trying to think off the top of my head what were some of the big ones. Death Stranding always does pretty well. But like, yeah, it's like Warhammer and Ghostbusters are things that are immensely popular, and comic book video games like Midnight Suns, like they all do really well, and the audience fits, and I love it. So it's like it's at this crossroad where like all these things that we love are happening at the same time, where it's like it performs well, it's fun for me, it's fun for you, like all these things are happening all at once. And it is sometimes rare. Yeah, and Arc Raiders actually does really well, where we have a great time, playing it, people have a great time watching it, the clips do really well, the streams do really well. So it's better to continue what's doing really well than playing like the games that are mediocre or not doing very well. Or when I scheduled certain games that I thought people were excited for, nobody shows up. So sometimes the scheduling is a gift and a curse, because sometimes you'll schedule a bunch of games and someone will be like, I don't like any of those games, I'm out. And then it kills your audience that way. And then there's also the other way of like, I never know what he's streaming. So I guess I'll just wait, and hopefully something I like will show up on my feed. And then if they don't see that, like I say, a lot of people only come when I play Resident Evil games. And I'm like, if I only played Resident Evil games, I would probably go insane. Because I do like some of them, but not all of them. And it would drive me up a wall. So I also want to get the podcast going a little differently. I've tried different days, and my schedule is so finicky IRL that I can't narrow it down to be like, oh, I'm always going to podcast Saturday afternoon, or oh, I'm always going to do this Monday or Sunday nights. And even when I have guests on, I will just tell them, I'll be like, give me a day and time that works best for you, and I will try to shift everything in my schedule to be there and make it happen. Whereas for the viewers, that might be more confusing, because they're like, okay, well, why is he doing the podcast on a Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon? Like, how am I supposed to know to be here? Have your notifications on, number one. And I post YouTube, I post TikTok, Twitter. Well, I don't always do TikTok. YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Discord, all those notifications. The YouTube community feed is the number one place to find everything and get all the notifications, keep up on all the new videos, all the new podcast episodes, and to see when something is up and coming. You can also check the homepage of my YouTube and see everything there. But yeah, So I think some things that I learned is that we can keep up with some sort of system of allowing people to know like what's in the works and what's always coming. But I think the one game a day is just not going to work. So it might have to go back to a partially vibes-based thing, and a partially like, you kind of know that I might be live in the afternoon for a bit, or you pretty much know for certain that I'm on every night at 9 Central. And I can definitely have. I just might not make the graphics and set everything in stone. Um, which isn't so much as an accountability thing, but it could be me needing to get back in the gym and to eat healthier. I need to focus on these other things. So, in a way, I do need to pull back on how much I'm doing, which the output is insane, and I love it. And I love that I get feedback when I'm firing on all cylinders and we're putting out everything. We're doing um, a game for several hours a night. But I also need to get a good night's sleep, so that also conflicts with everything that I'm doing right now. Is that there's no point in working out and eating healthy if you're not also getting a good night's sleep, which I already have trouble sleeping, which is why I like to stay up and play video games, which is why I like to work late nights, is because I might as well be doing something if I'm not going to be sleeping. So yeah. I think beyond that, focusing on myself, my priorities, making sure I'm healthy, definitely helps to where I won't have aches and pains. And I had talked with my doctor. He was talking about doing surgeries, here because, if he applies pressure here, my hand starts going numb. If he applies pressure here, my hand starts going numb. And, one of the things he mentioned was like this and guitar and camera and all these things kind of seem like your livelihood. These are things that you want to do. So I can't really tell you not to do them or to do so much less of them, because really I'm gaming at a level that's lower than most streamers or just most gamers in general. Like most gamers just sit there and veg out for like 8 hours and just no pain, no problems, and move on perfectly fine. So I'm like functioning on single digits compared to them. So I don't really have time to like enjoy a wide variety of games or get good at any one specific game to where I become like a professional or something. So he did mention that. So we're gonna try physical therapy. We're gonna try other things. I might even visit a chiropractor. I was thinking about acupuncture, which I have no clue. But a lot of people say it works for stuff. And every EMG that we've done, comes up with no problems, no nerve damage. They just say that I sort of have an entrapment rather than like carpal tunnel or tendonitis or arthritis. Like arthritis, I would have like bone problems and inflammation, various other things. So the things that are happening with me, and we don't believe it's linked to like the spine. We did MRIs on the head. We did X-rays of the spine, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Dried candy. I have had sweets with pistachios. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, hopefully it's nothing like horrible or terribly serious, but we didn't want to rush into another surgery, especially if it wasn't going to change anything. Because I had one here on what we thought was like carpal tunnel, likely because it was mostly these three fingers going numb, occasionally these two. But yeah, in the back of my hand would go numb and feel like I had a glove on, kind of. And that happens with both hands, but we didn't want to do surgery here if we didn't know that this fully worked. So now it's looking like it could be the nerve running all the way up to the elbow, which means you would do a surgery there. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I definitely need to put my health first a little bit. So there is a little bit of physical, which I think came first, and then the mental came after, where I was like, okay, if all this is happening, and I know up here that this method of daily streams and scheduled this game this day, this game this day, where you're not making progress in any of the games because you're really not playing them long enough to make a difference. And I literally can't do like 8-hour streams of each game each day. Like, it's just not physically possible. So, and yeah, you factor in how much time I spend editing, doing shorts, doing the podcast, if I'm writing scripts for something. So yeah, the mental and physical of just being in this room all the time, hunched over the keyboard and the mouse and the gaming controller and the lights and all that stuff stacks up after a while. So, but yeah, the numbness and stuff, it's going to be 10 years in 2026. Because it all started in 2016. I've been dealing with the numbness and pain in the hands for almost a decade now. And it only feels like now we're finally inching closer to a potential solution, hopefully. And maybe it's a lifestyle change. So we'll try some things. I'm going to actually try to ease up on gaming and focus on podcasting and certain types of gaming, and there's some scripted videos I want to make as well that I've been kind of just holding back on because it's like, no, I need to finish this game. I'm waiting to finish this game. People that are watching are waiting to finish this game, I'm very adamant about trying to actually finish what I start for the most part. There are some games that I'm going to play where it's like, yeah, we'll play it once or twice. And there's inevitably going to be things like that. But there are also going to be games like Assassin's Creed Mirage or Ghostbusters or Space Marine or Metal Gear Solid where it's like these are going to be finished. Or they're going to be played regularly, for the like live servicey type of games. Yeah, I appreciate that. Appreciate the support. Yeah. Yeah, like a schedule of like I'll be live on these days or whatever. And I think I could also sometimes say like which games we're going to play or just have the streams where they're not private, where they're public and you'll see it and you'll also get notifications for it. And I really did like the idea of planning out the whole week. I actually enjoyed that on Sundays of like going in there and looking at all the streams I did last week and making the next part, being like, okay, this is this is this. And the only thing I didn't like is when you're dreading to play that game because this is the only day you get to play it. And then it's like, what if you're not feeling it this Tuesday? Or what if something in real life gets in the way? Like today, I wanted to do some Warhammer, which we might do after this. I also wanted to do some Arc Raiders today, but that's too much already. Like, I want to progress in my quest lines on Arc Raiders. I'm also really enjoying the new Assassin's Creed Mirage DLC. I really enjoyed having Sundays for Death Stranding 2, which I was busy this Sunday. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's good that sometimes real life and going to the movies and stuff like that gets in the way. Yeah, I think there's ways to like modify the things that were positive and negative that I've learned the past few weeks, even though we didn't wait like 60, 90 days of trying this formula to get like a true analytical thing where we could look at it and be like, oh, our profits increased this quarter, and yeah, it looks like this, and this were the most popular. Because also, it's hard to measure any of that because shorts are what do the best on the channel. So it's like shorts and memberships are like where the money comes from and where the views and the ad revenue, which isn't much, especially for shorts. You have to have thousands or millions to get any sort of like a normal wage from that type of thing. So yeah, it's not enough of a flicker to be able to definitively look at it. Although like vibes based and just like a general outlook at the past few weeks, you can kind of see that the formula both in some ways did and didn't work. And that's fine because I've tried the scheduled thing multiple times throughout my streaming career. It's nothing new to me. I mean, we're like getting 11 years. Yeah, going on 12 years into my live streaming content creation career. So we're going to get some more guests on the podcast. We're going to try to make sure that podcast episodes are regular. I've had the suggestion that I do bi-weekly. Like, my goal is always to do weekly. And then I always worry that I won't have stuff to talk about. What if there's no news? And then I realize, I look back at some of my oldest episodes where I just made something out of nothing. I talked about gaming history or my favorite franchises. I just pulled a topic out of thin air and was just like, this is interesting. Let's talk about it. So maybe that's the direction that we can go if there's not interesting people or interesting topics to talk about. I can find them. I can create them. Part of what it is to be an artist, a host, an entertainer, all these various things. So, yeah, we'll see what this new week brings us and what new challenges face us. And I believe a lot of you guys have said Mikkel is the one to talk to about portable stuff and just about gaming in general. So let's see if we can extend an invitation to Mr. Casanova. And I would love to have another episode with him. But yeah, we just all get so busy in our own little bubbles, and sometimes we forget that we have all these cool people and all these opportunities swirling around us, and we just forget to kind of take advantage of everything that we have at our disposal and to try to do our best in that way. Yeah, Troy Baker next. Yikes. You're like, Troy, can you sing me BB's theme? Thank you. Okay. But yeah, that's a good idea. So this has been Shackcast episode 79. We are so close to 80 episodes. Not many podcasts even make it further than, I believe, what is it, like the first 20 or something is like one of the first like milestones. Is like most podcasts fizzle out in like the single digits, or as they get into the double digits, and people either realize like, oh, no one's watching, or oh, this is harder than I thought. We can't just sit here and just prattle on or have two people just talking over and over. You know, you really have to have dedication. You really have to have good ideas and good hardware and all these other things in order to keep this going. So I think the closer we get to 100 is incredible. We also know that Andrew Alliance, whose podcast I was on last week, over at the show radio, he's getting very close to 700 episodes. And I know we have some friends over at Gamertag Radio that, I mean, they're above 1,000. So it's absolutely incredible when you can keep it up and do a really good job and provide a really good, powerful service to people. So catch us for some games after the pod. Hang tight. Hope you enjoy it. And we will see you all on the next one. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast outlets. Leave us a message in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe. Consider signing up for a membership and supporting the channel. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.